Good morning, dear colleagues. Welcome, Vitaly. This is the second stage of the selection process for the High Qualification Commission of Judges of Ukraine, which is the interview. Let us start with some procedural rules with our protocol, and let me explain to you briefly how it's going to be done. So you have four members of the selection commission in front of you. This is me, Ivan Mishchenko, my colleague Stephen Markman, Serhiy Verlanov, and Robert Brookhuizen. We lack two members of the commission, which is Ted Zazachny and Yevhen Mezentsev, because they have announced self-recusal for your candidacy. Ted did it because he participated in the work of the commission that selected you for the High Anti-Corruption Court, and Yevhen Mezentsev announced self-recusal because you are together in the territorial defense forces of the city of Kyiv. That's why there will be four members of the commission holding the interview. What about the very interview? At the beginning, you will have up to 5 minutes to share some information about you and about your motivation to participate in this selection. And at the end of the interview, you will also have a chance to summarize everything and to probably draw our attention and the attention of the public to the most important things that you want all of us to hear. The members of the commission will be asking questions in turns. I will start because I'm the rapporteur for your candidacy. The interview will last approximately from 60 to 90 minutes, approximately, because there are four of us. We will see how it goes. The interview, as you understand, is in live broadcast. Maybe you have been watching some of the interviews and you know how it goes. Let me remind you and us, as members of the Commission, once again, that there is a request not to mention particularly sensitive information, some personal information or details related to you or the third parties, like surnames, phone numbers, addresses. This personal information should be kept out of broadcast, as we think. And suppose we start discussing something that is sensitive, as you think, and you wouldn't like this to be disclosed to the public, you may submit a request to have this part of the interview closed, and then we will not have the broadcast for this part of our discussion if that is really sensitive information. Suppose we have air alert, we will stop the interview and we will wait until the end of the air alert in the shelter. And unfortunately, yesterday we had some electricity problems, so the same rule will be valid for such situation with electricity cuts. From the point of view of the procedure, that's it. Do you have any questions or you do understand everything? I don't have any questions. I just have a request that suppose the questions are related to the members of my family and their health condition of my minor children, I would ask to have this part of the interview closed. Otherwise, no questions. Clear. So, colleagues, suppose we do have any questions of that sort, we will have the part of the interview closed. No objection. Yes. So the decision has been passed in case there is a question like this. That part of the interview will be closed. So that's all from me from the point of view of presenting the rules. And let me briefly introduce you, and then I will give the floor to you for your introductory speech. So, colleagues, today we have the interview with Vitaly Kryklyvyi. He was born in 1974 in the town of Horishny Plavny, Poltava region. He is a judge of the High Anti-Corruption Court, and the overall work experience in the field of law is 27 years, and he has been working for 21 years as a judge. He graduated from the University of Internal Affairs in Kharkiv, a diploma with honors in 1997. Well, that's all the basic, all the background information I had to provide, and let me give the floor to you, Vitaly. Good morning. I'm Vitaly Kryklyvyi. As you have already mentioned, I was born in 1974, and in 1997, I graduated from the Kharkiv University of Internal Affairs with honors. Then I worked for 6 years as an investigator in the internal affairs bodies and tax police. And in 2003, by the decree of the president, I was appointed judge in Komsomolsky Town Court. And in 2019, I was appointed judge of the High Anti-Corruption Court. At the beginning of 2022, when the full-scale invasion was launched, I concluded a technical contract with the Territorial Defense Forces unit in the city of Kyiv. And since that time, in my free time, I perform combat tasks related to the protection of the in defense of the airspace of the capital. I would like to be the member of the high qualification member of judges of Ukraine because I do believe in the importance of honesty and professionalism in the judiciary. The international commitments of Ukraine in the field of reform of the judiciary are important, and they are important in particular for the integration of Ukraine into the international society and for the sake of ensuring efficient functioning of the judiciary in particular. And my service in the HQCJ will enable me to make a contribution into ensuring the integrity of judges, assessment of judges, and raising the level of public trust in the judiciary. I understand what the challenges are that the judiciary of Ukraine is now faced with, and I'm striving to be a part of the reform which aims to improve the transparency and accountability in the work of judges. My motivation is based on my willingness to work among professionals in the team with professionals to deal with assessment and selection of judicial candidates. I really want my children to live in the state of law, which is not possible if we don't have judges of integrity. I want to contribute to the insurance of the highest standards in the judiciary, and I want to contribute to the introduction of the efficient mechanisms of selection and assessment of judges that would meet the international standards and the requirements of the society in Ukraine. That's all for me. Thank you, Vitaly. So let's start our round of questions. The first question is more or less obvious if we take into account the circumstances. So you are now participating in two selection processes. In this one, for the vacancy replacement for the vacancy of the judge in the HQCJ, a member of the HQCJ, and also for the judge of the appeal chamber in the High Anti-Corruption Court. And it may theoretically happen so that in both of the selection processes, you will reach a certain stage where you will need to choose. So, what is your intention? Do you plan to work in the HQCJ in case the selection commission will recommend you and the HCJ appoints you, or will you choose the appeal chamber? Please, could you tell us what are your priorities and why? What would you prefer from the point of view of choosing between these two selections? Well, the selection for the appeals chamber was launched before, and then came the selection for the HQCJ. That's why I decided to participate in both processes. It doesn't show that I cannot determine which one is more important for me. It just shows that the selection for the HQCJ will be my priority. And if I reach the stage when there is a final decision on my appointment as a member of the HQCJ, I will definitely prefer this position. Clear, thank you. My next question is as follows. Before you became the judge of the High Anti-Corruption Court, you used to work as the judge in the trial court and for quite a period of time you were the chief judge of that court for many terms in a row. So the legislation which regulates appointment or election of chief judges changed a number of times, but still, if we don't know the context, it may appear that you were the chief judge of that court almost all the time while you were working there. So could you please explain us how it happened so and what is the context of this situation? So the context of the situation is that starting with 2006 up to 2019, I was the chief judge of that court, but I was appointed on the basis of different regulatory documents which regulated the procedure for appointing the chief judges. Before 2014 or 2015, there was no ban on holding the position of the chief judge for more than 2 terms in a row. Then this ban appeared in the legislation, but there were final provisions in the respective regulatory documents. Well, it seems to me that the ban appeared in 2015, 2016, but the final provisions did not presuppose working in retrospect. They didn't presuppose the retrospective action and validity of this legislation. So, taking into account the norms, legal norms, and the explanations provided by the Council of Judges of Ukraine, decision number 31, year 2015, there were no precautions and reservations against my being appointed on a repeat basis as the chief judge. And this was all within the legislation because this appointment was not considered to be a repeat appointment. And besides that, let me mention that the achievement in the judiciary is the fact that judges are elected and chief judges are elected. And I worked in a team of judges who recommended me for this position, and they didn't suggest any other candidates for this position. That's why I performed those duties, and there were no claims and complaints on behalf of the public or on behalf of the court judges or stuff. Clear, thank you. My next question is as follows. You can probably guess what I'm going to ask because from time to time the public gets interested in this and they filed an inquiry with us, and we try to clarify this in writing with you, but still, I wonder if I could ask you to explain this story that you had with the state-owned housing, the company housing that was to be provided to you. What I mean is that your wife, first common law wife, and then, as far as I understand, you got officially married, is also a judge of the High Anti-Corruption Court, and she was a member of the Housing Commission of the High Anti-Corruption Court, that which, as far as I understand, is exactly the commission that passes a decision whether this or that judge needs improved housing or not. And when your wife was a member of this housing commission, you submitted the request for getting better housing. It was exactly in that period of time. So, could you tell us more about the whole situation? Just comment upon it. Uh, do you mean that I have to comment upon my family composition or the fact of getting the apartment? The fact of getting the apartment. Right. So, according to the legislation, particularly the law of Ukraine on the High Anti-Corruption Court, judges of the above court have to be provided with housing by the state. According to the regulatory documents for allocation of housing, the judges of the High Anti-Corruption Court are to be members of this commission. That's why my wife, Tatiana Kryklyva, was a member of that housing commission. She was offered this vacancy at the meeting of judges because she was quite a good expert in those issues. As far as allocation of this official housing is concerned, so taking into account the legislative requirements for anti-corruption, she did not participate in the voting. This housing commission is a joint body, and all decisions there are passed at the meeting of the body. And my wife did not participate in the voting procedure when it came to the issues that had something to do with improvement of my or her housing uh, conditions, and she was not engaged in the registration of the applications for improved housing. That's why the possible private interest, the conflict of interest that you could see in the work of two judges of in one and the same court was regulated, and there was no real potential conflict of interest in that situation. There was already the vetting conducted by the Council of Judges of Ukraine, which stated that there was no potential and no real conflict of interest in that case as far as allocation of that housing is concerned. Clear, thank you. And here is my favorite question that I actually tend to ask all candidates about. Did you have an opportunity to read or look through the report of the European Commission on the progress achieved by Ukraine and on what still needs to be done for Ukraine to become a member of the EU? Yes, I am acquainted with this report. I have read it. Well, there are a number of things in that report. Definitely, a lot of things related to different fields, different domains. And there is a phrase, a statement there. Let me find it. If you have the command of English, you will listen to me. I'll first read it in English and then I will translate it into Ukrainian. So the European Commission states the following. So, what the European Commission is trying to say, let me find the adequate translation of that report. So, they say that the updated system should include for systems of higher courts a temporary interim but meaningful procedure of vetting with engagement of independent experts. What do you think the Commission means by that? Who is supposed to have this vetting? Should it be the HQCJ or HCJ? Or any other body, any other commission, and how does it correlate with the principle of judicial independence? And do we generally need this, need to make it happen? What do you think? Well, I've been thinking about that, and I personally think that in Ukraine we do have the situation where the state judicial administration is conducting information for judicial dossiers, collecting the data about the work of judges from year to year. But this judicial dossier is not an applicable document which really matters, but for the facts, but for the situations when judges participate in the selection processes for holding some position, vacant positions. So I think that the European Commission means that taking into account the results of judicial assessment that was launched after 2014 2014, taking into account the fact that during this assessment, some drawbacks in the professionalism and integrity of candidates were revealed, and then they either independently resigned or they were dismissed on the basis of the results of this assessment. So the European Commission thinks that it is necessary to go on with this positive experience to have regular assessment of judges, at least as far as their integrity and also their professionalism is concerned. These vetting events can be conducted by the High Qualification Commission of Judges of Ukraine, but only after it has completed this selection of judges and assessment of judges, which they are conducting now. As far as engagement of international experts is concerned, I think that it's something mandatory because that will show the efficiency on the way to supporting the integrity. And as far as the in time interval, well, it could be 3 to 5 years. I think that would be enough. Clear, thank you. Let me ask one more question and then I will give the floor to my colleagues. So, could you please tell me, Vitaly, this is a rather general question, I would say. The High Qualification Commission of Judges of Ukraine so far contains different members with different backgrounds. These are lawyers, attorneys, scientists, researchers, judges, and there is also your colleague, judge of the High Anti-Corruption Court, who's also a member of the HQCJ. So these are different people with different backgrounds, different skills, different experience. So as you think, what you could contribute to the work of the commission, how could you enhance the efficiency of that commission as a member of the large team? Well, taking into account my experience, which I already told you about, in particular the fact that I worked as the investigator for a long period of time, I worked as a judge for a long period of time, I've had more than 100 interviews or interrogations of people, and I also analyzed documents and the evidence given by those people. And I was scrutinizing them, trying to check their objectiveness and their integrity. So I think that my experience in analyzing the documents within the judicial dossier or the documents of the judicial candidates, and my experience of asking questions and analyzing the answers heard will come to be handy in the process of identifying um, candidates who are professionally fit for the judicial positions, and I will be able to see whether people are those people are people of integrity or not. Because I think that integrity is actually the most important component for judges and prospective judges. Thank you. That's all for me with my questions. And let me give the floor to my colleague, Stephen Markman. You're very much welcome, Stephen.
Thank you, Judge Mashenko. And Judge Kryklyvyi, thank you for being here today and participating in this competition. My first question is this, Judge Kryklyvyi. In Ukraine, there have been many reform efforts over the years, including this reform effort. And I don't know all the individuals who've participated in these efforts, but I assume all or most of them are honorable individuals who are sincerely interested in elevating the Ukrainian judiciary. And yet, after all these reforms and all these years, we have a judiciary that you describe. It's a tough description, but you describe it as one in which there are too many judges who are not qualified and honest. And I'm not disputing your characterization. I'm not agreeing with your characterization. You are more expert in that than I am. But my question is this, and there's no trick to my question, but what must be done by the High Qualification Commission, particularly if you become a member of it, to ensure that we don't have just one more reform effort that looks in history not to have made any more of a difference than that? What most of all will be the legacy of Judge Kryklyvyi in ensuring that the HQJC um, becomes a reform effort that makes a difference for this country, for the people of the country, for the rule of law, for the ability of Ukraine to become part of the European Union? What must be done, and what do you intend to do? What most of all will be the legacy that will make you proud of your service on the HQJC?
Before I answer your question, let me mention that since July 2023, we have had the new composition of the HQCJ, and it shows quite good results. And the pace of the assessment is quite good. We can see that they are trying to cope with the gaps that we had in terms of the assessment. And that's why, answering your question, I would just like to mention that my sense of integrity and my sense of justice and my professionalism will really contribute to the continuation of the work of the HQCJ in the way that they have started their activity, and my ability to work in a team, as well as my ability to express my opinions and to advocate my opinion, will also contribute to that work.
Well, of course, I'm very pleased to hear that the new HQJC is doing a good job and hopefully will be making a difference. But we've had good people who've been involved in judicial reform efforts in the past in Ukraine, haven't we? And their legacy, in your view, is a judiciary that needs a lot of work, a lot of improvement. Um, is there more you can say about this, or are we just hoping that things will work better this time, or is there some hard evidence to suggest that the new commission will make a bigger difference in your view, and that it will not leave the judiciary with too many people who are not qualified and honest? I don't mean to press you on that too much, but we really do want a commission that's going to leave a legacy and not simply be the next reform effort that hasn't worked out as well as its makers thought it would.
Well, that's actually what I've already mentioned partially. I would like to be a member of the HQCJ in order to promote the introduction of regular assessment of judges. And I think that in this, the HQCJ will promote the style of professional judges who are men of integrity in the judiciary, because at the first stage of judicial assessment, it is not always the case that we can really see that the person meets professional criteria and is a person of integrity. So I think that regular assessment could be a positive steps towards exercising control over integrity among judges. And I think that here I will be able to help the HQCJ in its work.
Expertise. What is the selection commission been doing right in your view? Have we chosen good people? Have the people we've chosen adopted better procedures? What, uh, what in your view makes this version of the HQCJ more effective in your opinion?
Well, if I characterize the work of the selection commission, I can tell that it's really true that you have been very efficient and very transparent in your work. And we could get access to information about the work of the Commission in any resources. And the algorithm, the work of the Selection Commission is also clear, which confirms that it is objective in the selection of good candidates for members of the HQCJ.
Is there still something you think that they could do better than they're doing? In other words, the first day that you come to work on that commission, um, is there something you want to urge them to do, something you want to remind them they've got to do better, something that will encourage them to move in the right direction as best as is possible?
So, if we're talking about the improvement of the work of the HQCJ, so if that's my first day, and well, even if I don't become the member of the HQCJ, I could give this uh, advice. They should be more clear with the requirements for candidates. Because then there will be more people who will be able to participate in the selection. We know it from mass media and from the information that we can see on the website of the HQCJ that there is a considerable number of judicial candidates for appeal instances and for the High Anti-Corruption Court. Um, at the stage of document registration were not accepted because it was not quite clear what documents were to be submitted or those documents were not submitted in time. So we have to be more flexible, I guess, in this. This commission, your commission, that has given us a chance to still add the documents which were lacking, because that will increase the number of candidates for the mm, positions of judges, and then we will probably have better opportunities, and we will be able to really select people of integrity and professional people.
And finally, you think it is best for the cause of judicial reform in this country that we now remove you from the High Anti-Corruption Court and put you on the HQCJ? I know you've been asked that question already, but I just want to ensure that I understand that properly.
Is it going to be good if I stop working at the High Anti-Corruption Court, right? I don't think it's going to be a bad thing if I'm appointed as an HQCJ member, because potentially, yes, maybe some court hearings may be delayed, but as practice shows, and you mentioned that my colleague from the High Anti-Corruption Court is already a member of HQCJ, and the majority of cases actually I received those cases that he was supposed to hear. So actually, I was able to complete hearing of those cases. So I don't think it's going to be any hindrance in the work of High Anti-Corruption Court. And if my work helps prevent us from elevating judges with no integrity to their positions, I think then in the future we will have fewer criminal proceedings with regard to judges.
To my colleague, thank you very much.
Good morning, Vitaly, once again. So, in the context of questions just asked by my colleague Stephen, I'd like to do a follow up. In your opinion, are there any problems that prevent HQCJ from being more efficient in the organization of its work? Are you aware of any of such issues? Well, there are some internal and external challenges. We know about those internal challenges. There are some issues with the secretariat of HQCJ, and the head and the deputy were dismissed. So in essence, the staff has no management, but I think this problem is to be solved via a transparent selection. And as far as external challenges are concerned that have to do with the Public Integrity Council communication, yes, there are also challenges of this sort, but I'm seeing some progress, and I also think that these problems will be solved in the near future. Can you name any priority tasks that should be solved by HQCJ in the near future to make its work more efficient? Well, first of all, it's about the synchronization of the work of HQCJ and Public Integrity Council to make HQCJ more efficient as far as evaluation is concerned and the selection of candidates is concerned. And also, they need to complete those selection procedures that have already been launched so that we can fill in the vacancies and improve the general state of the Ukrainian judiciary. Thank you, Vitaly. In your motivation letter, you say that in order to fill in the vacancies, we need to have a more detailed vetting of the moral criterion of candidates because you believe that through the prism of moral criterion we can form the authority of the judiciary and trust in confidence in the judiciary. So I'd like to find out what kind of tool are you going to use to assess the moral criterion of judicial candidates. If we're talking about moral qualities, then an interview is not enough. We also need to analyze the background of the person to be able to identify how a person would behave in different situations, how they understand the moral and ethical qualities of a judge. So we need to analyze the judicial dossier, which is put together by specific authorities. So we need to analyze information with regards to different types of liability, lifestyle, property status. And on the basis of these documents, we then conduct interviews and ask questions about these aspects of the candidate's life. And then we analyze their answers. Because if a person is trying to distort information or evade the answer, it already tells us that this person does not comply with the criterion of high moral qualities that a judge should have. Thank you very much. I have the next question for you. At the beginning of your introductory speech, you claimed that you wanted to become a member of HQCJ, in particular because you wanted to make a contribution to the general state of integrity of the body of judges that we have. So, in this respect, I have the following question. So, what is the standard of proof? And what would be the most relevant standard of proof when assessing the integrity criterion and why? Yeah, it's an interesting question. So, if we are already talking about the standard of proof, then I think that we need to assess how robust the evidence is. If in the case file we have some information that, for example, let's assume a person has some issues with their lifestyle, then a person needs to explain where the assets come from and how they got to acquire the assets, how their family members got to acquire the assets after they have been appointed, for example. Thank you. And which of the two presumptions should we use while assessing judges? The presumption of integrity or presumption of a lack of integrity? The presumption of integrity, of course. Thank you. I have no more questions. And with this, I'm giving the floor to my colleague, Robert. You're welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Kryklyvyi. I understand I didn't pronounce your name well, huh? Because we met and apparently my pronunciation was not very good. When I woke up this morning, I opened Facebook and then I saw a message from the Euro Foundation that shows a picture of you and that makes remarks about your integrity. What is your opinion that you have an interview and that there are remarks on Facebook about your integrity? And do you find it difficult if people make remarks about your integrity? And this happens, if you are a member of the HQCJ, are you able to work together with civil society without any difficulty? 3 questions in one.
So let me clarify. So, how should I respond to a post on Facebook, right?
No idea. The only thing what I see is that the Euro Foundation puts on Facebook a remark about the candidate that's interviewed here. Yes? So we members of the commission, we read Facebook and then we see those remarks. Maybe the question to you is, how do you feel about this? Do you find this proper or not proper? Is this a good idea or is it not a good idea? And do you find it acceptable that CSOs are making remarks about your integrity on Facebook before you have an interview with us?
So let me just specify that I haven't seen that post, but if it does exist, I think that it's appropriate, and I'm even pleased that civil society organizations remember me and they are trying to convey some of their thoughts about my candidacy to you so that you can formulate specific questions and you could ask these questions. So it means that the public is interested in what I have to say. So you can ask your questions and I will try and answer them. And with regards to my interaction with the civil society, I think this is something that the HQCJ needs to do. It needs to analyze the information that can be found in open sources, the information that is coming to the HQCJ with regards to candidates. Of course, this information should be checked using various tools. In particular, if we are talking about some sensitive information that may factor in the decision-making process. And also, we need to ask the candidate themselves about those things so that we can understand what the truth is.
In fact, of no problem that they make remarks about you, and it would not influence your working relationship with the civil society organizations.
No, there will be no influence, and I'm used to this already. I have been working at the Anti-Corruption Court for 5 years already, and we have this regular interaction with civil society, and my attitude is very positive. I see this as a positive thing that the public is monitoring my work and the work of the court where I'm working.
It's about an administrative case you heard regarding someone called with the first name Valerie Krasnopir, And there was a case against the State Automobile Inspection in Venetia with regard to a case to cancel a decision of an administrative offense. And the resolution against the driver was cancelled. How this works, I have no idea, but this is what I read from the information I have. And then, I understand, in 2018, you indicated this person, where you took a decision on something to do with his car, as a person who could give you a recommendation. So apparently what the allegation is that first you took a decision in a certain case related to an individual, and that later that this person then recommended you for some kind of a position. What is your views about this? If this would be true, then it looks a bit like a conflict of interest.
Yes, I'm aware of this information. I read the dossier. I didn't know about it before. Yes, indeed, in 2015, there was a case about an administrative offense involving Mr. Krasnopir, and it was about the cancellation of the ruling on administrative liability. As we can see from the content of this decision, the decision was made in absentia, and at that time there was no communication between me and Mr. Krasnopir. And taking into account a big number of cases heard at our court at the time, the Court of General Jurisdiction, and plus it was written proceedings, I made my decision based on evidence provided by the State Vehicle Administration. And actually, the offense was about speeding. It involved speeding, and a device was used to measure the speed that was not supposed to be used by the patrol police at the time, because it did not ensure the video recording and the identification of the vehicle which allegedly committed the traffic offense. And since there was no additional evidence provided in the case, I made the only decision possible to support the claim and to cancel the ruling. And then, when in 2018, I decided to participate in the selection to the High Anti-Corruption Court, I started to think about people who could provide a reference to me. And of course, I approached people who had a certain positive reputation in the city where I was working at the time. And Mr. Krasnopir was somebody I knew already. And I knew him as an efficient, very diligent lawyer who represented the interests of economic agents in commercial and administrative courts. He never represented his clients in my court, so I saw no reason for not approaching him, asking for a reference. So I just asked some of my colleagues to approach him, and he knew that I was a judge, that I had a good reputation, and he agreed to provide a reference to me. So that's how it looked like. In any case, these two episodes are not interconnected. These are two separate events. Number one, this administrative case and my involvement in it, and then the letter of reference. So this is my answer.
To make this clear for me, because not completely clear. No doubt you know when you took the decision and what year that was. Is your statement that you did not know Mr. what's his name, Krasnopir at that moment? Or is your answer, I did know him, but I didn't notice that I was taking a decision regarding this person?
Я з ним особисто
I did not know him personally at the time because I was working in a small town. I knew of him because actually he was very active. He had a very active public stance and he was involved in very significant projects, one of them being restoration of an old church in one of the villages and the erection of a monument to Taras Bulba. This is a fictional hero. And also in 2013, as far as I remember, he was again involved in another project, erection of a monument to Cossacks in one of the towns. So I knew him as a qualified professional, as a diligent, honest person. We were never acquaintances. We never met personally. So we didn't really know each other before I got a reference from him.
You remember when you took the decision, what year the decision was taken?
я подивився
So I looked in the dossier, it was 2015, October the 20th.
2018, he writes a recommendation for you. And a recommendation, that means that he knows you well. So he only knew you for a very short period then.
Він мене
Well, he knew me well as a judge working in the town of Horishny Plavny. He knew of me as a judge with a good reputation, as a professional. He knew me as a public activist and a representative of civil society.
Our chairman, he mentioned or discussed with you the issue about the apartment, where I understand that your wife is the boss of the department in the court that provides this housing. That's correct, huh? And questions were asked to you in writing about this. You answered those questions, and you briefly discussed this also with our chairman. And what I was triggered by is that your answer was, let me see, that you say, well, my wife recused herself of the voting. But if I think about this with, let's say, my mind, I always say that integrity is not connected by just following rules. It must be in your heart and soul. And integrity issues are not related with voting only. Because if you're the head of a department, of course the people who work with you or for you, or the people who make decisions, they at least often, if they have a good relationship with the boss, they want to please the boss or do something for the boss. And then it is not unlikely that indeed the boss, if she or her husband applies for an apartment, will get a better or nicer apartment than someone else. And I would say this is only human, because this happens all over the world, everywhere. The question then arises, of course, is whether your wife and you should have accepted it, knowing this, because you are judge in the high anti-corruption court, and you know all those sensitivities. So my point is, I don't feel that the answer she worked by the rules is sufficient. So, because that is not sufficient to prove integrity. Can I have your views on this?
Так.
Well, for me to be able to answer this question, I need to give you more background information about how judges of High Anti-Corruption Court get these official housing. As I've mentioned already, according to a relevant law, judges that do not have housing on the territory of the city of Kiev should be provided with such housing. And for specific procedures to take place, it's not supposed to be a department, but a commission is set up. It's a housing commission. And this commission is not a unit within the judge, it's a collegial body created on the basis of the court. And members of the commission are also some judges that need improvement of housing. So at the beginning of the work of the commission, members of the commission decided not to vote on those items that have to do with the provision of housing to members of the commission itself. So there is actually no subordination here, and the head of the commission has the organizational function only, and their function is to announce the dates of the meetings of the commission and also signing the decisions together with the secretary of the commission. So in this particular case, as far as integrity is concerned, there were no violations. And the head of the commission or any member of the commission had no influence on the location of that apartment, the area, the interior decoration quality of that apartment, because according to regulations in place, every judge had an equal sum of money that they could use to buy the apartment, and then according to their own preferences as far as the neighborhood was concerned, the number of bedrooms, they looked for the apartment themselves, and then the High Anti-Corruption Court bought the apartment for them and transferred that apartment for use of the judge. So there was no competition with regards to getting a better or worse apartment. So all judges were bought these apartments and then they were distributed between the judges equally. And it wasn't the commission distributing the apartments, it was the meeting of judges of the High Anti-Corruption Court that was responsible for that. And the judges asked for a specific apartment to be given to them, and the meeting of judges made specific decisions. So again, there were no questions about integrity when making the decision on the allocation of a specific apartment to a specific judge, because a specific judge did not vote for that decision to be made according to our anti-corruption legislation. So this is how the procedure looks like. It follows the code of judicial ethics as well. So if I were to answer your question, there are no reasons to believe that there was lack of integrity in this procedure or violations of the judicial code of ethics. And let me add just one more thing, because, excuse me for interrupting you, but I saw what the civil society representatives were writing about, but according to the law of Ukraine on High Anti-Corruption Court of Ukraine, all official housing provided to judges cannot be privatized or transferred into ownership of a judge, as is foreseen in other cases by the Ukrainian legislation. And once you stop working at the Anti-Corruption Court of Ukraine, you need to vacate the apartment, and the apartment will be transferred to another judge that would need housing. So there is actually no vested interest in me getting this apartment, other than the fact that my apartment is currently located closer to the court where I'm working. Thank you.
Judge in the
Гаразд, дякую. І
you're a judge in the High Anti-Corruption Court now. Let's say that you are a member of the High Qualification Commission. And in the High Qualification Commission, you no doubt will be involved in the selection of judges for the High Anti-Corruption Court, where you of course know everybody. And let's say that, and of course, the candidates will, the names of the candidates will be published. And what will you do if you receive a call from one of your friends or one of the friends of your wife and would say, well, you should really have Mr. X or Mrs. X. They're fantastic persons and you should, those people are great. You should select them. What will you do?
Тут дуже проста відповідь. Я не буду
well, the answer is very simple. I will not respond in any way to all those requests. I may just warn that this is not possible if they go on with those calls. I will have to inform my bosses and the competent bodies about getting such calls.
That was my question. Last question, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Yeah,
So, Vitaly, let me ask you the question which I have already asked, but I just want to ask this question whenever I face a new candidate. Why? Because that is a really complex issue. In your motivation letter, you claim that in the future you would like to see the Ukrainian judiciary independent, impartial, effective, and fair. Well, we all want this to happen. I think that this can be achieved primarily, and here is my citation, and there will be a question related to that citation, by way of filling the judiciary with qualified judges who are people of integrity. Where from do we take them? Where do we find those people? Yesterday, I already asked this question, almost the same question. That was the question for another candidate, and the answer was that there just needs to be more funding for the judiciary and everything is going to be fine. But as I perceive the situation, well, now we don't have such a long queue of people willing to become judges. At least that is something I don't see. And I don't see that even in this waiting line of people willing to become judges, we could have a lot of, let's say, successful lawyers, or maybe, more of them in the field of criminal law. I know more in the field of commercial law, business law. They are not that much willing to become judges. So, what could we do about that? How could we create this waiting line? Just in general, if there was an opportunity to bring something into life, to convey some messages, so what could be done? Well, I think that besides ensuring better transparency of our procedures, I mean, selection procedures for candidates, we also need to do more efficient information awareness raising campaigns to keep telling the public about the importance of the work of judges, about the fact that judges are the people whom the state needs badly. And here I could give you an example. The armed forces of Ukraine now contain a lot of people who are not military by their career, by their background, but it was in the light of this patriotic move that they were trying to start their career as military men to defend Ukraine. So probably the salaries there in the judiciary are not that high,
суспільства, але якщо може
but if a person is a patriot and really wants to make a contribution into the development of the state of law, then the person will join this work and may join this work. But we need to explain to people that that we need them badly here and now, exactly in those positions. And I think that this will contribute to the appearance of the waiting line you have been mentioning.
Дякую. Колеги, чи будуть ще запитання?
Colleagues, any other questions for Mr. Kryklyvyi? Stephen, you're welcome. Microphone.
Answer to the first part of my colleague Robert Broekhuizen's question concerning the criticism of you and your quick response that they have a right to criticize you and you have a right to respond to their criticism as you've done today. Is that a fair summation of what I just think I heard in that respect?
так.
Yes, I'm even grateful to the people who are criticizing me because if there is some criticism, you can respond to that criticism and you can probably analyze your conduct and draw some conclusions, which is very good. If we have transparency, we have criticism in place, and you can respond to that criticism and analyze the mistakes made.
I think you make a good point there too. Transparency is an antidote to corruption, not something that facilitates corruption. Let me ask you, though, to respond, if you would, to another case in which you were involved. Could I ask you briefly to explain the lawsuit that you filed against the police of Kyiv that resulted in an administrative penalty being imposed upon yourself? Can you just summarize what occurred there briefly?
Так, я
Yes, I've looked through this case. That there was a situation like this. Well, without going into detail of the very offense, it was true that there was a protocol compiled by the police, by the patrol police. But are you asking more about the fact of this offense, or are you interested more in the court case, in the claim? All right. Well, after the protocol or the resolution, the ruling was compiled against me, well, I saw that it was highly disputable, and I decided to have a complaint in the administrative court of the city of Kiev. And then I, well, took into account the fact that unfortunately in this category of cases we have a lot of long and tedious procedures, and the court fee for this case would be twice larger than the fee that I had to pay. The fee was 425 hryvnias, and the court fee for the consideration of this case would be 840 hryvnias. So, taking into account the tedious procedures that we would have in this case type, and the fact that the court fee would be larger, and I also took into account the fact that I would have to pay more attention to this case, and this will probably cause some delays in my work as a judge, and I decided not to continue going with that claim to court. And I decided that I would be more attentive while driving a car, and I would better try to follow the rules for the patrol police staff not to have any doubts regarding the fact whether I committed some violations or not.
Judge Kryklyvyi, let me ask my colleague, Judge Verlanov, to address you if he cares to do so.
Є ще запитання, колеги?
Colleagues, do we have any further questions? No, actually, no. Okay, then, thank you, dear colleagues, and let's try to wrap up our interview. And the way we agreed it at the to do it at the beginning, Vitaly, please let's have your final remarks. Maybe you want to summarize the interview. Maybe we have missed something, or you have failed to mention something in your answers. Please, you're welcome. Thank you. I would like to express my gratitude for the opportunity provided to me to introduce my candidacy. My motivation to join the HCJ is based on the fact that transparency precedes the judiciary and constitutes the basis for the development of the judiciary. I'm ready to work for the sake of the country and to make a contribution into the development of the independent and impartial judiciary. I do believe that my professional skills and qualities and my dedication to the principles of integrity will contribute to the changes that will help us build the state of law where every single citizen will feel protected. Thank you for attention, and I hope really much that you will believe in me. Thank you, Vitaly. That will be it. Thank you.